and welcome to the final webinar session of the Great International Education and School Fair this November 2020. So I'm delighted to introduce this webinar, Exploring Curricula and Higher Education Options, which is going to be hosted today by Jane Constantinis, who will now introduce you to our panel for today.
Fiona, thank you very much. Yes, good morning and welcome. We're rather sad that it's the last event of this month of activities. We hope you've enjoyed the content that we've been offering you. And today is a treat because we have got some really practical intel and advice from a panel of experts on, as Fiona just said, curriculum and higher education options, helping you to be able to choose the right option for your children so that they can be set up for the future that they want as global citizens. Let me introduce you to our panelists. Ksenia Popach is an expat and entrepreneur with over 25 years of international experience in teaching and education consulting. She provides educational solutions for families who are relocating and also offers college counselling for Germany and the Netherlands. She's a multilingual speaker of 5 languages. I'm hoping that she's going to choose English today. And she's located in Sneek in the Netherlands. Ksenia, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Johanna Sale is the Vice Principal of Impington Village and International College, which was named the UK's top non-selective provider of the IB in the Sunday Times Parent Power 2020. As part of her role, Jo's responsible for the International College curriculum and options processes for students across the whole college. Jo, good morning from what looks like a chilly Cambridge, yeah. The wind,
yes, good morning.
Foggy and windy, I think.
Absolutely, yes.
You look toasty in your scarf, though. Thanks for joining us. Richard Parker is head of the International School of London. He's got a very broad experience of international education, having worked in Hong Kong, Portugal, Brunei and Spain over the course of 19 years. He's a CIS visitor and chair, that's the Council of International Schools, and he's got an MA in International Education from Bath University. Richard, good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Hello. I'm very excited to be here.
Oh, well, we're excited to have you. Thank you. Now, Kate Raisin, I hope, can hear me and speak. Are our IT issues sorted? Not entirely. But let's carry on working on that behind the scenes, Kate. So hopefully by the time you're going to speak to us, we'll have sorted that out. But let me introduce Kate anyway. She's from UK Study Options, and she's an expert in higher education options in the UK, having worked in admissions and international school recruitment at a number of very prestigious universities, including Imperial College. She helps students all over the world get into the top universities. So welcome, Kate. And of course, we're going to be hearing from Fiona, who many of you know very well, managing editor of Relocate magazine. Hi, Fiona.
Hello. Nice.
You got the email about Red today, then?
Yes, we did. So did Jo, but I don't know about the other 3.
Let's kick off then by looking at curriculum options all around the world. And for families and parents who are looking at this possibly for the first time, it must be a very daunting prospect. Richard, I wonder if you can help just simplify for us what the options are across the globe.
Yeah, sure. Okay, the first thing to say is that there are 2 understood international curriculum, if you like. And the most understood is, of course, the International Baccalaureate. The International Baccalaureate is recognised, I believe, by every country in the world bar 3. I think the only 3 countries that don't recognise the International Baccalaureate are Algeria, South Sudan and North Korea. Now, don't quote me on that, but it's something like that, and it's very close. And it means it's understood everywhere. And that's especially important for universities, because it means that if you're a travelling family, you know that if you're doing the IB, it doesn't matter what university system you try and go into, it's understood. And for a school like ours, an international school where we'll have people going to universities all over the world, we feel comfortable with that, and it's nice. The other thing about the IB is that it goes right the way from primary all the way through to students trying to go into university. And it's a very adaptable curriculum, because for the PYP and the MYP, it's based on concepts. So rather than having content that you have to do, there are concepts you can explore, and you can adapt in different countries. So just as a quick example, if you're, say, supposing you're in middle school and you're exploring democracy, say, as a concept, you can explore it from different perspectives, depending where you are, and have different types of discussion. And so the conceptual approach allows it to be more flexible. Mm. Of course, when you get to the last 2 years, there's a lot of choice of content, but then content becomes more specific. But that's the kind of IB approach. Mm. So that's, if you like, the most well-known international curricula. There's also something called the International Primary Curriculum. A lot of primary schools do that across the world. You kind of look at, if you're looking at that, the IB, PYP and that, and thinking what's the difference? Well, the major difference is that the PYP is conceptual, and the IPC has sort of themes that you explore. So it might do something on the rainforest example. They're kind of global themes, slightly different approach, but that's basically the difference. The thing about that curriculum, though, is they go into middle school, they don't go all the way through. Mm. So the IPC is really, and it's really known for primary school curriculums, and a lot of primary schools do that, and will often then switch to the IB later. Mm. So that's the IPC. And then if you travel around the world, the most, if you like, done curricula tend to be the American curriculum model or the British curriculum model. They tend to be. You could sometimes see Australian, it's true. And sometimes you see you see other curriculum as well in specific countries. I worked in Hong Kong where they had the Singapore curriculum. You see that in a lot of countries. They have very specific curriculum. We all know that we see French lycées, for example, all over the world that follow the French system right the way through to the French Baccalaureate. But international, so-called international schools have a tendency to then do either the British or the American curriculum.
Mm. Thank you. Jo, you're doing the IB in middle school, which is quite unusual, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely, certainly for the UK. So we are currently undergoing our sort of preparation phase to offer the IB Middle Years programme. And I believe I'm right in saying we'll be either the only one or one of a very few number of schools in the UK to offer the Middle Years programme, the Diploma programme and the IB Career programme, which we also do in the sixth form. So, I mean, as Richard said, they are fantastic curricula. We have run the IB Diploma programme now for over 30 years. So we're one of the most experienced providers of the IB, one of the most experienced in the UK and certainly the most experienced in Cambridge. But for us, absolutely, it's the holistic nature of education that those programmes offer, and also the fantastic breadth as well as depth that all the programmes offer, which is why we're so keen to introduce it into our main school, into our middle school.
Mm. Ksenia, when you're helping parents, when you've got a set of parents in front of you for the first time, tell us what you advise them about curriculum options.
Well, I look at the child. We do the intake call and look at the strengths, and we look at the whole child. Mm. And of course, the curriculum that the child, background curriculum, but we think ahead, we look at the future plans. If, is the family going to move elsewhere? Let's say a family came to Germany in 2-3 years' time, they will be relocating to Singapore. In that case, we always advise them to go for an international curriculum, and they do decide, and that is usually IB curriculum, and many schools, they may offer different curriculum in the primary school, but at the end of the day, the upper school curriculum is the IB curriculum. So that is definitely IB curriculum, because the families know that no matter where their children are going to study, they will be able to get the admission at a desired university.
Mm-hmm. So that's making decisions based on what the family, how mobile the family is going to be. So you've mentioned there, Ksenia, that it's about the family's mobility and how often they're going to be moving around. But what about focusing on the child? Richard, would you say that there's a particular kind of child that is better suited to a particular kind of curriculum? You mentioned the IB being very broad and conceptual. Does that suit every child?
I think the IB is designed in such a way that it is open to everybody. There's some debate about that. There are some people who argue that the IB DP is designed for more academic students. I would dispute that. And there's also the new program that was talked about that's been around for a few years now, which is the careers program. So the IB has adapted to basically be there for anybody in terms of their ability. And I think most curricula do that. I think when you look at a school, you look more at the culture of well-being that they build rather than necessarily curriculum, and what schools are doing to ensure that they really do cater for the needs of those children in different situations. The only thing I would say about the IB is it's holistic. So you don't have that situation in some curricula where you have to suddenly decide that you're going to ditch something, or that you don't understand why certain subjects connect, and it does that all the way through. And that's a nice thing about the IB.
I must say my daughter's in her GCSE year, and she's having to do a whole lot of science subjects, and that's not her strength, and she's had to drop some of the humanities where she is really strong and interested in them. So there are limitations to the GCSE system as well.
Add something here,
yes,
regarding the children and their strengths. There are students and there are parents where, we can see that IB is just too challenging for them. In that case, there are possibilities. Some schools offer certificates, IB certificates, and those kids may choose those certificates and they won't graduate with the full IB diploma program. But however, there are university options where they can still be admitted, because at the end of the day, for what's really important, that a child feels good at school, that they can enjoy the program, that they can enjoy being part of a multicultural community. However, from my experience, I had parents that said, I believe that, it will cause a lot of stress for us. My child is not used to this type of program. So in that case, we decide on certificates, and we do give them options, on university options, where their child or children have realistic chances of being admitted.
Joe, what's your position? Oh, sorry, Richard. No, go on. You first.
No, I just think it's worth adding as well that if you do certificates, which means basically less subjects in the IB diploma, there are lots of really good university options. It's not as if, especially in the States. So I think it's worth seeing. It's not necessarily a kind of a lesser deal. There's lots that can happen with that, and there is flexibility there.
And in Europe as well, Richard.
Yeah, and in Europe as well. Very true.
Well,
yeah.
So there are a lot of options. So in this case, these children can graduate and still, be happy and go to a desired university.
Joe, what's your experience at your school? Is the IB more rigorous intellectually?
Well, it's a really interesting question because I suppose the short answer is yes. Certainly when you compare it with the national exams in the UK with A-levels, it is definitely more rigorous. And that's because of this conceptual and this layer of critical thinking that runs all the way through the IBDP that all subjects seek to get students to engage with. But I would also challenge the idea that the IBDP is only for an academic elite. And I think that particularly in the UK, there are a lot of schools that market it as such and ask enormously high GCSE grades to be able to get students onto the IB diploma programme. And at Impington, we ask students to have an average GCSE grade of a 5 to do the IBDP, which is pretty low. And that's because we've seen over our 30 years some incredible successes of students who come in with really quite, sort of low to middling GCSE and absolutely flourish. What's critical with the DP is that the subjects are chosen and that they are tailored specifically. So, for a non-scientist, you wouldn't suggest that they go and do chemistry and physics, for example. The IB, I think, over the last 5 or 10 years have done amazing stuff with really expanding the subjects that are on offer. So subjects like the nature of science, for example, which isn't a mainstream subject yet, but is still in pilot. So we're a part of that pilot, is actually about the history of science and the philosophy of science and science as a way of knowing. Rather than a distinctive body of knowledge. And things like that are really exciting options for students who are not necessarily scientists on the DP. And of course, you've got all the languages options as well. So the ab initio languages, or German GCSE, and unlike Lydia, are not sort of naturally gifted in their language. They can. At Impington, we offer 2 ab initio languages. So we offer Spanish ab initio and Japanese ab initio, which is hugely popular. And the students don't need to have prior experience with it. So if you tailor the DP, if you have a coordinator who knows what they're doing and who knows the subjects, and if the school are willing to have that broad range of subjects, then I actually think the DP is hugely accessible by those GCSE grade 4, grade 5 students.
And I would agree with that. I just say that we have a completely inclusive DP. We don't have any requirements to do DP at our school. Anybody can enter it, and you'll have surprising results. So I agree with that. I'm always got a problem with schools that tend to do the DP as an exclusive subject. And the IB itself will quite vehemently argue that it's not for just academic students. Schools be able to do that. Some schools just don't have the experience to be able to run programs that can do that.
Great. But I think that's also brilliant. Something like a career program really lifts off, because the IB career program, students take 2 or 3 program subjects along with a technical qualification. For us, it's BTEC, but a number of other possibilities. And again, that really suits students who have that quite narrow range of interest.
It's interesting, Jo, that you said advice for parents is to talk to the school. That prompts me to show you something, a piece of a video, because Fiona last week had a conversation with Catalina Gardescu. She's head of admissions at the American International School in Bucharest, and obviously she's an expert in admissions and a parent liaison as well. So let's have a look at what she had to say about the subject of admission.
Hello, Catalina. Lovely to see you here today. Perhaps we could start by you just telling us what your current role is and your job title.
Hi, Fiona. I am the Manager of Admissions and External Relations at the American International School of Bucharest.
Brilliant. Good. It's lovely to have you here today. Now,
Thank
two
you.
essential areas that our parents and employers and relocation professionals need to know are about admissions, and then also about parents and what they need to be supported. So I know these are your particular specialist areas. So let's just start with the one that that all parents need to know. So as an admissions expert, what do parents really need to know before they can make their school choice and apply? And then also, if you could just give them a quick checklist of what they need to have at their fingertips.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. I think before saying anything about any checklist or what they need to do, it's very important to for parents to make sure that they reach out and get informed about schools in the area that they're moving to before they do anything else. Because whether your child is going to be happy or not in the school is going to make or break your experience, regardless of how wonderful the company is, of how great the job, or how beautiful the house. So many times in my work in admissions, I've witnessed heartbreaking situations where we, for example, were not able to service the child, or were not able to offer a place in a class. And unfortunately, the family had already signed a contract with the company and they were now in a bind that was quite difficult to navigate. So make sure that you treat this as a priority, as your child's education is a priority, not just for your child, but also for the family. So there are 4 things that I want to encourage parents to do to be well prepared for choosing the right school, as much as we can make a choice, by being remote from the school, not within the community. First of all, they should do their homework. So nowadays we live in a world where we have tons of information online, not just on the website, but also in parent forums, through maybe the relocation companies that you get in touch in the country that you're moving to, or even your HR firm, former colleagues. So do your homework, get information as much as possible, especially in the areas of interest for your child, or of support if that's needed. Number 2, and this is something that's quite amazing to me, that I have parents who apply without seeing the school. Always ask to see the school, whether in person or virtually. Once again, this situation that we are living now has given way to so many technologies. Ask to see the school, and when you do, turn off your phone, be present, be there, listen, take advantage of that opportunity, and pay attention, not only to what you're seeing, but how the atmosphere around. Look at the children if you can. I mean, ask to see the school when it's in session, to see the kids. Are they happy? Are they engaged? Do they have friends? Just be observant. Number 3, very important, to the degree that you are able, given his or her age, involve your child. At the moment when you are able to talk to your child about this move, or about the potential of moving to another school, try to understand what are his or her worries or expectations. If you can, bring the child along to the tour, maybe the second one. Any school that is committed to service you well should be able to offer you 2, 3, 4 meetings according to your needs. And last but not least, if you want a checklist, some of the things that are always going to be asked of you are school reports, usually for not just the past year. So you might want to start creating a file when you know that, okay, maybe a transfer is approaching. So you might want to start creating a file with school records, to email teachers that know your child and his needs very well for references. And of course, have your ID papers in order. And also, if there are any kind of other documents that might be relevant, make sure you have them there. And in that respect, I just want to say a word to parents of children with special needs. Don't delay the response that you get from the school that you're going to by not offering all of the information. If you have any kind of psychoeducational reports or any kind of individualized educational plans, please send them to the school, because that way they will be able to give you a more specific answer much quicker, other than just tens of emails back and forth. How about this? How about that? And then, oh, I remembered I have this document. So the more prepared you are, and the more you pay attention during the actual interview, the more chances you have that you make a good choice for your child's education and set yourself for success as a family wherever you're going.
Brilliant. Well, that's really sound advice. And that replies not only to people looking for schools in Europe and Romania, Bucharest, where you are, but all over the world. It's pretty
all
universal,
over
any region. So thank you. That's excellent.
You're very welcome.
Now then, a little more not interesting, but relevant coming up is the parents and how important a parent liaison is. And I understand you have that role, and particularly when COVID is so forward in people's minds, knowing that there is somebody that they can count on. So I think that's you.
I hope that's me. Yeah.
That sort of role and how that's developing.
Thank you for that question. I feel that's so important, both as a school representative and as a parent. My son is in 7th grade. And I've been in the admissions office for almost 2 decades. And if there's one thing that I can say without a doubt, is that I can see the difference in success and in growth between the kids whose parents are partnering with the school and the kids whose parents aren't. But we're not taking the kids from the parents and just kind of minding them and then giving them back. We're entering a partnership, and it's even more relevant now when parents have become partners in teaching, not necessarily because they wanted to, but because they had to. So it's extremely important. It's this kind of red line that always has to be a line that always has to be open. That way, schools shouldn't have anything to hide. So they should always be available to talk to parents. And when parents have that openness, they worry less and they are able to be involved more constructively. So maybe coming up with ideas or participating in different activities. Right after this meeting, I have a new invented meeting called Ask Me Anything. It's actually just a cup of coffee with whoever a parent wants to join. And we're talking about anything from, how do I order food from the cafeteria today, or who's the transportation company representative, to where do I go in Bucharest for holidays because I'm not leaving, or just how are you? And I think that's very important, especially in a community where you have people coming from all over the world. That let's not forget the fact that families who've just transferred or are expats in the country have a very hard time during lockdowns. And before the pandemic, the school used to function as a community where, that's where you form your connections. If that disappeared 90% because we're not in campus anymore, we need to find ways to maintain it in any other way, because these people can get quite lonely, and that will affect their entire experience in the country. So schools are extremely important in creating this relationship.
So you're talking now about online. This is an online virtual reach out to parents that you're doing. Yes. So that's a wonderful initiative. And I think quite a lot of schools are doing something similar. So we'd urge all parents to take that up, even if their children have been in the school a long time.
Oh, definitely. It's replacing, if you want, the water cooler talk. We used to be able to, we have a cafe in the middle of the atrium at the school. Obviously, that's now been discontinued, but it used to be buzzing. And so, we started from the idea of, we really miss that. How are you guys? And so sometimes we just sit there and talk nonsense, but it's about the presence. It's not about the topics that much.
And when the school is open and back to normal, what sort of things are there that families can engage with? I know a lot of international schools have an International Day, for example.
Oh, yes, International Day. We are now around the time of Thanksgiving. So we are running what we call a harvest festival, trying to go a bit more global in terms of a potluck kind of dinner. We run a gala for a scholarship fundraising, and have monthly parent and leadership team coffees or teas. Offer the parents the possibility to meet in country groups. That's very important, to reach out to the ones who speak your language, know your traditions, cook the same food. And of course, International Day, which is the crown jewel, so to speak, an amazing thing that I hope we come back to very, very soon, because we miss it.
And when do you normally hold your International Day? Is that the end of the academic year?
In May.
Brilliant.
Spring.
Yeah. Well, we look forward to hearing all about those wonderful celebrations. So thank you for the great work you do and those wonderful ideas for parents of how they can become a true partner with the school and part of the community. Thank you.
You're very welcome,
Catalina.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Fiona, for talking to Catalina for us. Lots of interesting things there, but I want to pick up on something that Catalina said, and Ksenia, you also mentioned this earlier. Part of our focus today is on curriculum. That is only part of what schools offer, and parents should be looking at the broad picture, shouldn't they? Ksenia, when you're advising families, what do you tell them to look for?
It is their child's well-being. At the end of the day, that's what matters most. We all know if a child is happy, the families will be happy. You know, the mom will be happy, and it will actually influence their perception of their host country. And so when what I advise families is, first, let's say, families move in the middle of the school year. So one of the first questions that I advise them to ask is how, ask school and admissions officer. So how do you integrate newcomers? Because this is the most important thing. And, and then we work out the whole list of child-specific questions. They have certain questions. And for example, one family from India that question was one question which was crucial for them was, okay, can we get vegetarian food at the cafeteria? We are vegetarians. So you can imagine that once they get the answers to their questions, they feel much more comfortable. But I would like to stress out one more time, child's well-being. It is really important that, the child feels comfortable socially, emotionally, and academically. This comes on its own.
Yeah. And Richard, at your school, what sort of activities do you put in place to welcome and integrate the young people and their families?
Yeah, actually, I'd really like to talk about lockdown, because I think that's a good time to focus on wellbeing, because that's a period when really mattered. Our school, some of you may know, we have a really large home languages department. So we offer home language to anybody, wherever they come from around the world. So we have something like 23 language teachers at this point in time. During lockdown, they were key to our whole well-being approach, because if you're isolated in another country, you need contact with the school, and the best pastoral approach is via the mother tongue teachers, because they make the connection. And there are so many stories about our mother tongue teachers, home language teachers, reaching out to all the families and building that sense of community. And I can give you lots of examples. So, for example, in Eid, which happened during lockdown, the Arabic teacher went to every single family and left them a little present at the door. That's a huge thing in lockdown to make them feel that matters. The Dutch teacher had a Dutch online gaming session that all families were involved in, so they could play games online during lockdown. The Portuguese teacher had some poetry online, so they had these little Portuguese poetry sessions. Poetry is a big thing in Portugal. There's some very person called Fernando Pessoa, and there's lots of things about him. And we actually end up having a multilingual poetry chain. So because I think that the one of the aspects of well-being that is so important is if you're moving around the world, it's not just the children, it's the entire family, because they need to feel connected. And lots of those families, the community, the school becomes your central community, your real support element. So that's what we did during lockdown. We have a big transitions program. We do lots of things to allow to welcome kids, help them come into the school. We have something called the World of Cafes, where we meet with every community and have chats and a coffee chat, so we can talk to different communities about how they are and how they're breaking in. And so lots of things like that. But I think the multilingual and the intercultural approach is really quite key if your school function is to be there for international families.
There's a lot of coffee drinking going on, isn't there, during lockdown? And cake eating and baking, and there's nothing wrong with that. Joe, we've started to talk about COVID. Of course, we couldn't not touch on it, but there's Brexit as well around the corner. How do you think those two events are going to change the academic landscape?
Well, yeah, it's a real double whammy, isn't it? Brexit and a pandemic all in 1 year. I mean, for us, it's changed our landscape hugely. For the past 25 out of our 30 years, we've had students come and study with us in Impington, which is just outside of Cambridge. We've had students from all over Europe actually come in themselves and stay in host families nearby the school. And because of that, we've developed a hugely personal and also a very efficient pastoral system to look after those children. And absolutely during lockdown, that was so important. It was everything for those students who were, the host family, but very separated from their parents. And technological applications like Teams has been vital in that. And also I agree with those first language students are absolutely vital for international students. But what we're seeing now is actually a move away from that. Brexit is now stopping UK state schools from being able to accept students coming and studying on their own. And we're going to do it now, and as our market is shifting now more towards families who are relocating back into the UK. A lot of that is being hampered by the pandemic itself. So it has been incredibly tough, and I think it's changing education absolutely.
Yeah. Kate, are you with us?
I don't know. Am I?
You are.
Hooray!
We've beaten the technology.
I'm now an expert in mic problems, so if anybody wants to ask me, please do.
It's all about having a portfolio career, isn't it?
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Kate, finally, how do you think? Let's look at the same issue as Joe. How do you think the landscape, the global education landscape, is changing and is going to change, particularly as a result of the pandemic and Brexit?
Well, there are lots of changes in terms of the university perspective on this. So obviously universities are adapting to all sorts of different types of learning. They're doing online learning, hybrid learning. For the students they do have on campus, they're social distancing. And this has all happened very, very quickly for them. So they've had to do really well to step up and put those safety protocols in place and continue to attract students from around the world to come and study in the UK, which has been a real tall ask for them. In terms of Brexit, it's going to change the higher education landscape quite drastically, because before Brexit, European students enjoyed home fees at UK universities. They no longer do. They are now classified as overseas fee payers. So that's going to mean that a lot of EU students are going to think now, do I want to go and study in the UK? It's much more costly than it used to be. Is it still worth it for me? So universities are potentially looking at a lot less students coming from the EU, and that's going to change the demographic of students in this country quite quickly within just the space of 1 year. So there are going to be lots of changes. The good news is universities really do want EU students to come here, and they're making a real effort to come up with different schemes and incentives in the form of grants, scholarships, and fee freezing for EU students specifically, to continue to try and encourage them, get that diversity of nationalities in their classroom, and continue to provide world-leading education to anybody who wants to come here. So it is very interesting. Lots of changes happening right now, and we're watching that and seeing what's happening. But we think in the long term, higher education in this country will bounce back from all of this and will continue to be a fantastic place for anybody to study here.
While we've got you and while we can hear you, a moment ago, and I'm sure you were listening, we were talking about curriculum choices, school curriculum choices. Give us your thoughts on how parents and young people should be thinking about their subject choices with an eye on the kind of university education they want.
Yeah, it does depend on the curriculum and what subjects are available, but it's definitely something that students should be thinking about very carefully. So we always say, kind of jump into the future. What do you want to be studying at university? What do you potentially want to be doing as a career? And then you take the steps back to say, okay, well, what's the pathway towards that? So with IB, there are more compulsory subjects such as science, language, right to the end of school, which can be an advantage. For A-level students, they may need to be more selective about which of their subjects they are carrying right through to the end of school, because that will impact which degree they go into. So there's lots of information out there, particularly the Russell Group has a really good website called Informed Choices, and it talks a lot about what subjects lead nicely at A-level into certain courses and how to make those decisions. So it's really important for parents and students to be thinking about, where do I want to go and what's the right pathway to that before they make any choices. They can go onto the university websites to check what are the entry criteria for the courses that I'm interested in. Are there particular subjects that are compulsory in order to study? And also, is there a particular grade that I need in that subject in order to get onto that course? So if you know that you need a high grade in a subject that you're not great in, that might impact your subject choice, subsequently your course choice.
Would you explain for anybody who doesn't know what the Russell Group universities are?
Yeah, so this is a group of 24 universities, typically the top universities in the UK. They have a research focus, so they do lots of research and also research consulting, and that feeds into their teaching. So they very much boast being at the forefront of education because they've got that research element feeding into their classroom. Other universities are fantastic as well, but just the Russell Group are particularly well known as being ranked highly, excellent for research, excellent for teaching. So a couple of examples of who the Russell Group are, which these will be names everybody knows: Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial, Birmingham, Nottingham, Exeter, lots of names that people are familiar with. And yeah, as I say, lots of other universities outside of that group are also fantastic. And it very much depends what you want to study and other criteria you have for choosing a university. But typically Russell Groups are kind of well known. They have lots of good resources for students to help them choose their pathway in terms of education.
Richard, how do you work with your students to help them make that transition from school to university?
I think we do a number of things. One is, because we're quite international, we tend to look at different country options. So we don't tend to just look in one country. And actually, there are some significant differences. So if you're somebody who really knows what you want to do, then in lots of ways, the UK system is a really good system because it decides quite quickly. If you're somebody who's less sure and you want a more open approach, then the States, for example, tends to have a more liberal arts approach. You decide later, and there's a different type of option. So I think if you have families that are internationally mobile, they have to think a little bit about that as well. What kind of system really suits my child? And there are lots of European options these days. We found that quite a number of students going to Dutch universities, for example, much more than we used to have. And I think the world's becoming more diverse. Canada, we've always had a lot of students going to Canada. So what we have to do is get a sense of what all those options are and how they're different and how they might suit you best. So that's how we approach it.
And Sania, you know a lot about the Dutch system, obviously. Tell us about your experience of different universities.
So the Dutch, there is a distinction between two types of universities. The University of Applied Sciences and research universities. And research universities would be, for example, Erasmus universities in Rotterdam, University in Rotterdam, or Rijksuniversiteit in Groningen. And once again, the students, those who really aim to, do the research, opt for these type of universities, and they're very competitive. It is not really easy to get an admission. However, these students that graduate from IB schools and have pretty high IB scores, they do get admitted. And what is really good for international students, and that's why the Netherlands is a very popular destination, are English taught programs. You can come to the Netherlands, and I must mention Germany as well, you can only study in English. The second type of universities are University of Applied Sciences for those students who would like to gain more practical experience from the field, spending a semester either in a company in the Netherlands or maybe in Germany or elsewhere. They have a choice. They may choose even to go to the US and, do the semester there. And of course, and it is the country that attracts a lot of international students. So those students coming from international schools would like to be surrounded by, many nationalities. We have universities that have 45 different nationalities. And, the common language is English. They also attempt to learn Dutch, which is not the easiest language in the world, but I always encourage them to do that. And in Germany as well, apart from that, because they will understand the culture much better. They will be, and at the end of the day, if they decide to, look for a job either in the Netherlands or elsewhere, somewhere else, they will have an additional language, because usually kids that come from international schools, they are either bilingual, trilingual, or multilingual. It's not something which is, seldom.
Yeah. Joe, where do your students tend to go on to in terms of university and further education?
So our students have an incredibly broad range of destinations after they finished with us. We have a lot of students who maybe go back to their home countries, so go to university in Italy, in Spain, in Germany, in Poland, and other Eastern European countries. We also have a number of students who increasingly have gone further abroad. So we have students at universities now in the US, in Canada this year, which has been a relatively new pathway for our students, and of course the UK. So Impington students go absolutely all over the world. But one thing I think is really interesting is the popularity of the Netherlands universities, certainly. With UK students at the moment, and also increasingly I've found in the last 2 years with Italian students and some Spanish students we have now who go to the Netherlands rather than returning to their own countries. And I think those English language courses are fantastic. In the UK, the majority of our students will go on to Russell Group universities every year. Several will go to lots of the London Russell Group universities, so King's College London particularly. They are great proponents of the IB and work very hard to make sure that their offers are very fair for IB students, but also other universities in London, such as SOAS, Imperial, as well as, of course, outside of London to Oxford and obviously Cambridge, which is just down the road for us. So we do have students there as well. So it's an amazing mix. I think we should also say that we also increasingly have students now who go on and do apprenticeships. And of course, they have been affected by the pandemic quite badly. But still, some fantastic, level 4 apprenticeships, which students have gone into in the motor trade industry, and somebody last year in race car work, and just a brilliant diversity.
How interesting. Kate, I'm so glad that I'm not applying to university now, because I don't think I'd get in. It is incredibly competitive now in a way that it just wasn't when I applied. Give us a sense of how young people need to be preparing themselves for those applications.
Yeah, it does depend what the student wants to study and what university they're going to. Obviously, how competitive it is to get in depends on, whether you're going for medicine at Cambridge or something else. But it is generally the case that far more people are applying to university than there are places at university. So if you look at the entry criteria on the university websites and you are meeting the academic requirements, that's great, but that's just the minimum entry requirements. You do need more than the grades to make sure that you get that place and not the other person applying. So the way that students do that, the way they stand out and make themselves an excellent candidate for that course, is generally via the personal statement, which is very important in the UK application system. It's the space where the students get to talk about, them, beyond their curriculum, talk about what their passion is for the course, what they have done to explore and develop that subject knowledge further outside of their school curriculum. That's very important to universities. We call that super curricula, because there is the curricula at school, there is the extracurricular, which is your sporting and your musical interests and things like that. And then there's the super curricula, which is you exploring that subject even further when you've got that academic hunger and curiosity to know more. And that might include things like going to lectures or doing MOOCs, massive open online courses, which are free for people to do, done by a lot of universities around the world. Or it might be listening to podcasts or reading academic texts or journals. And you can put all of this content into that personal statement to show that you are really an excellent person to study this course. So that is how people really stand out. And alongside that, there's also your references from your teachers, which can also just give you the edge in terms of applying to university.
And Richard, are you helping your students with the super curricular activities?
Yes, I've actually got an interview today with somebody who's applying for Cambridge, and a lot of that is about your thinking beyond the curriculum. I mean, you just have to do a lot of work on that, and that's also true in different countries. You have to tailor it to the needs of the different places you're going, and it's very much dependent. So some places it's not the case. So Australia, it's very much a points-based system, and you don't have to do that. So it really does depend on the country. But yes, where that's needed we do. America, the States, you need to do a lot of work on your personal approach to the university of your choice.
Yeah, and Xenia, this must be something that you're also helping parents with. You're on mute again.
All right. So, yeah, that is correct. What the universities, both in Germany and the Netherlands, are looking for are well-rounded individuals. They want to make sure to retain these students, and they want to see the reason why they want to study at the university. So motivation is very important. They do need to send a motivation letter. We need to see extracurricular activities, their engagement outside the school, engagement in the community, and then there is an interview. At the end of the day, the grades are not that important. The most important facts are the motivation letter and the interview.
Yeah. And Joe, presumably you are also producing well-rounded citizens and sending them off to university.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's one of the huge advantages of the International Baccalaureate, in that in one qualification, you get all of these things. You get your academic curricula, you're also encouraged all the way through to engage with the super curricula, as Kate called it. And also you get, as part of your diploma, the extracurricular. So within the creativity, activity and service, you also get all of those activities that go to show what a fantastic human being you are, and particularly the service learning aspect, which is about working with your community. So, I mean, working with IB/DP students on their personal statements is a joy, because it is all there. And then what we do at Impington, we work individually with each student, and we're lucky enough to be able to do that. We're small enough to be able to do that, and really help them to explore what are the very best things about their 2 years with us, or their 5 or their 7 years with us, depending how long they've been, and how to get that into that one actually very short statement for university.
Yeah. Very sadly, we're almost out of time. I want to spend a few minutes in a moment asking Fiona to recap on the whole month of activities. But I wonder if I can ask each of our guests today to give us their final tip on how parents should approach the business of choosing the right curriculum, with an eye to the future, the journey that the young person is going to take through the education system. And I wonder, actually, if I could start with you, Richard.
Yeah, I'd always put the well-being of the child first. If well-being's fine, other things will come. And that's actually the thing that matters most. And sometimes it's the thing that parents don't spend long enough thinking about. Everything else follows from well-being, in my view.
Thank you. Succinct and to the point. Joe, what about you?
Well, I would echo that. Wellbeing is hugely important. I would also, and we always do at Impington, we fly the flag for the International Baccalaureate. I think it's probably the best programme, depending whichever stage your child is at, primary, middle years, or diploma or career programme. They are truly amazing educational opportunities.
Kate.
Yeah, I would also say think about the individual, the student, and what's best for them, what their strengths are, their learning style, their communication style, what their study passions are, what they might want to do in the future if they've got an idea yet, and think about which curriculum complements that. There are tools that you can use out there, kind of psychometric tests and things like that, to gauge all of those things if you're not quite sure. So there are ways to kind of choose which curriculum best suits the student, and obviously that if they are in the right curriculum, they are going to flourish anyway. So yeah, the rest will follow quite nicely if they're on the right curriculum.
Thank you. And Senia.
I would finish off by saying the school you choose is the future you choose. So make sure to choose the school which matches the needs of your child. But do not forget, look into the past curriculum, current curriculum, and the future curriculum, and how to bridge the curriculum gaps. The curriculum gaps always exist, no matter where you relocate. So this is also very, very important, but bear in mind the well-being of your child, as it has previously been said.
Fantastic. Thank you, all of you, for those really helpful and practical insights. Fiona, another really excellent conversation. Thank you for bringing everybody together today. How has the month been for you?
Well, it's been absolutely wonderful and a real roller coaster. But while we're just talking about curriculums, I just flag up that we had a session on the French curriculum only this week. So there's plenty of information there. And of course, lots of British schools and English curriculums throughout the 4 weeks we've been doing it. So I think you can harvest a lot of information on different curricula. So really, I think the highlight for me really has been the absolute warmth and generosity of the schools and indeed all our speakers who got involved. There's so much passion for education, but also rising to the challenge of COVID. We didn't have much time to talk about it on this session, but really there's been outstanding leadership in schools rising to that, not only on the health and safety, but also the technology aspects, but also schools really communicating well with all their communities, their pupils, their staff, and their wider community. And I've heard reports from schools who've done surveys that the parents have really appreciated that. They were giving as a given the education would be good. They expected them to manage the online system, but really the sense of a community of the school and knowing what was right and what was in the best interest of the child coming from the school was hugely valued. So thank you to you all for doing that. On the health and well-being, I mean, I thought it was a real honour and treat to have Dr. Anisha Abraham talking about raising global teams. And whether you're a parent, a grandparent, or within the school, there was lots there, backed up by her expertise as an adolescent healthcare professional. Whether you're wanting to face those difficult questions or dealing with exam stress or COVID or whatever, and very accessible. So I'd urge you to listen to that interview and read her book about global teams. We had a great technology insight from the Bridge School, which is a totally online school. And that was also great for questions about where are schools going next. Is it a hybrid process? Is it a matter of coming in and out of online learning with the pandemic? Or will schools start to really think about, well, we could have a totally online version of our school for pupils around the world? So lots of interest coming out of there. And of course, exploring these issues about global citizens and what is internationalism. Are fascinating, and we had some great heads on who shared their views, and I should be getting in touch with them and saying, can you expand on that? People would like to read a bit more, and hopefully we can have some sort of forward-thinking discussions when we come back in the spring. So I think really there are just so many. But also yesterday we were twice in Vietnam, which was a real treat to be engaging with schools in such a fast-growing economy, and hearing from, there was the European International School on our trip round Asia and the Garden International School. And then yesterday we had a lovely case study from the International School of Ho Chi Minh City, where they had a parent, the head of their parent organisation and their student president, as well as the head, really exploring what does it mean to have an international education, which again for parents and for employers is a great resource to look at.
And Fiona, all of this content is available for people to watch again or for the first time, isn't it, on your website?
It is. So there's a section for the Great International Education and Schools Fair. There's a button on the menu, and that'll be there for the rest of the year. So schools were invited to send us their online directory. They've provided virtual tours and USP videos, and then articles, and if they've contributed to this sort of panel, the information's there. So that's a really good way to check out what schools are up to and learn about the people, the schools that you've heard about today. And then there'll be editorial, and we're going to summarise or capture a lot of what's come out of this November in a supplement which will be available in January. And then we, as I said, we hope to have revisit to coincide with the spring admissions cycle, and have some more sessions like this in the end of February and early March.
Fantastic. Well done to you for putting it all together. I think it's been an extremely timely, useful program of activities, particularly during these difficult and testing times. There's a bit of levity to properly round off the month this afternoon. Comedian and writer Chris O'Shaughnessy is going to give us an amusing take on globalization and what it means to be a third culture kid and adult. So that's at 3:00 this afternoon. Just what we need on a Friday afternoon. So don't miss that. I'm going to hand back to Fiona in a moment. It just remains for me to thank today's guests for their contribution to a very interesting debate, and to wish you, when it comes, which is not far away, a very happy Christmas, however you're going to celebrate it, whoever you're going to celebrate it with. And if you're in the UK, get the sprouts on, because you can never do that too early. Fiona.
Thank you. Well, I would just like to endorse our huge thanks to our panel today. So that was a wonderful final session, and thank you very much for participating. So as we just whisk through these slides, there are the details of our speakers today, and you'll be able to access this via the website and request the details via the website. And then this is just a summary of some of the wonderful webinars and talks we've had today. Again, all the playbacks are on our website, and they make fascinating listening. And then we urge you to do catch Chris O'Shaughnessy, who's really going to give a light-hearted but extremely meaningful session this afternoon. He's written this great book about third culture kids, but he's moved this on now to look at the implications for all those business people and internationally educated young people who've gone on to work around the world and maybe in third or fourth generations, and what they have to offer as we work our way out of this pandemic and look to the future fit employment and changes in the workplace. So have a laugh, have a chuckle, and then we'll throw open some of those ideas and bring them back in the spring. So it just remains for me to thank you very much again, and just to give a plug for the Relocate and Think Global People Awards. We'll be really delighted if any of you would like to enter. Entries will open in January, and there are award sections for schools to enter, and languages and family support. So please think about joining us. We had 10,000 views of our virtual awards ceremony just in the following month since May. So that was simply amazing. Also on the website are the lots of articles and contents, including the Guide to International Education and Schools and the Education and Schools Guide, which are available as ebooks also to download. So that really is it for this morning. Thank you again also to Jane Constantinos, who's been a wonderful host. We met her first at the virtual award ceremony back in May, and it's a great pleasure to work with her again.
Oh, thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you to the schools for keeping open, and for all the information you've imparted. So enjoy the rest of the term, and we look forward to engaging with you again in the new year. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.